On April the 12th, 2009, we received a house fire call. Came in approximately 12:15 in the morning.
It was fairly close. It was only maybe a mile or two from the station. So we had to get dressed pretty quickly. But I believe the dispatcher came back and said there's multiple calls. So if we get that response in the Houston Fire Department, if they come back, the dispatch says multiple calls, our ears kind of perk up like, okay, we probably have one. We probably have something.
And I did notice that the wind was blowing pretty good. Once we got on location to the street, I knew it was going to be a cul-de-sac, and the houses were backed up to a bayou. We had heavy smoke going across the road. All the yards had heavy smoke. There's probably about 10 yards in that particular street. So when we first arrived on location, we were a little confused on what house was exactly involved.
I heard Engine 26 go on location, saying we got heavy smoke. Engine 26, it's Captain Harlow that was saying it. He said we're going to make a offensive attack. And I remember our district chief, Chief Escamilla, telling Ladder 26, "I need you to ventilate."
I proceeded up the ladder first. Once I got up there, I helped and assist with the roof ladder on placing it on the ridge of the roof.
We just started doing our job. It was just a normal house fire. Putting ladders up, getting on the roof, and doing our ventilation. As
he's cutting, I've got a hand on him, and I am observing as I'm holding on to him that we have got fire coming through the cuts as he's making them. So I motioned for him to hurry up and get it done. And as I did, I'm observing the area around me. I looked at the back of the roof, which I'm on top of the roof, and I observed a fire overlapping the eaves. It was approximately 2 to 3 foot wide initially. I looked down to see how far he was on the cut, and I looked back up, and now it extended to 10 to 12 foot wide. And it was coming up the back of the roof like a wave would at the beach. It went from 10 to 12 foot to 20 to 30 foot. It just covered the back of the house, and it was rolling rapidly.
We got it ventilated. As we were coming down, we get down, and then Captain Davis told me and the other firefighter we need to do a 360. And so there was no distress calls this time. So we start to make our way to the right side of the house, and there was more like a brick facade wall where we couldn't get over it.
So we turned, and we're running back the other way, and we're coming to the location close to where the front door is. And at the moment as we're approaching where the front door is, because we're going to pass it, 2 firemen came bailing out on fire. Their gear was on fire. We stopped, we put them out, and as I looked up, there was a large pane window next to the door, and the interior was fully engulfed. It was just solid fire.
The other crew member on Engine 26 had notified Division Alpha that his crew, he wasn't with his crew, that they were still inside.
I immediately went Mayday on my radio, told them the crew that we had missing, how many personnel were on it.
Captain Davis had actually went in the front door and followed the line to see if he could find him at that time.
It was totally involved. I stayed all the way on my stomach. I went in about, 12, 15 feet, just totally engulfed. I got on their hose line that Captain Harlow and Hobbs had. I noticed that there wasn't any pressure on it. There was some water in it, but it just wasn't any pressure. It wasn't totally charged. So I thought for a second, well, I was in about as far as I could get in, and I knew it went down, I figured another hallway, and then to the back of the house. It was a very large house. So I decided I would pull the hose, and if they failed, they would be on the hose, and then I know that they would be there. I would crawl to them. So as I'm pulling the line, it's coming to me very easily. I get to the nozzle and no water, no pressure. So I started calling for him.
I had made my way back to the front of the house, and Captain Davis had come back outside to change his bottle.
I went back in. By now, we've got ladder pipe operations, got the 2.5 going. I got back on my belly. I went back in there. I get back on the line, and this time it's charged. And so I'm able to crawl in a little further. I open the nozzle. I get on my back. I'm hitting the fire. I'm trying to hit it in front of me, make it a little further in there. I'm hollering their names out. And I get back, and I'm hitting it. And then all of a sudden, I feel something tugging on my shoulder.
I just remember telling Captain Davis, I'm right here. I got your back. We're not going nowhere. And I'm just, spraying, trying to keep much fire out with the little water pressure we had.
And I said, keep this fire off us. Just keep it off of us. I said, hit it above us, hit it in front of me, and let me crawl on in there. So he was doing that. He was fighting it, and then I would crawl further. He would hit it, I'd go further.
It was just, visually you could see everything. Everything was on fire. I mean, it was just, as soon as you walk through the door, there's fire all over our head.
I was trying to listen for their air pack going off, their alert system. I couldn't hear anything. Fire was really making a lot of noise.
Division Alpha Chief was yelling at us to get out. And I remember finally Captain Davis turned to me and goes, okay, Rob, let's slowly back out, let's fall on it. So we started slowly backing out.
We still had a tremendous amount of fire. The ladder pipe was doing a lot, but then it got to a point the ladder pipe was started knocking in the roof. My intention, when I first went in, I wasn't coming out without them. But now, the second time I go in, conditions change because I've got one of my men with me. So as the roof's falling in, I make a decision that we both need to leave. So we left, we crawled out.
The firefighters have already been brought out. They set up a tarp with some pike poles so they could shield them from the news media because we knew they would be on the way. I went around and I saw it for my own eyes. The guys are really gone. And this job that we love so much, and we were just eager to come to work every day, it just suddenly got real.
I came into my position in the professional development office in February of 2012. And one of the first challenges that we were given as the professional development office was to put a class together on the wind-driven fires. And we had to get a better understanding of what was going on. We had to understand all the different elements and had to engross ourselves in the information.
The NIOSH report was very eye-opening. We had NIST come up there, I think Dan Madrukowski. I actually talked to him and asked about the science. And it went against everything we've always been taught. We'd always been taught you make an attack through the front door, through the unburned side. And this was a classic, it wasn't burning in the front, it was burning in the back. And we had never been schooled on wind-driven fires.
We went down there with an expectation that wind was a big factor. Certainly looking at the remains of the house, it was pretty clear. The upwind side of the house is destroyed, burned down to just a few 2x4s. The downwind side of the house is still pretty well intact. If we look at the wind-driven simulation, you'll notice that initially the fire is in the rear in the den area. And then as each action by the fire department is taken, opening the front door, then we have the roof vented and you'll see the label pop up, and then the windows break. And we don't know what broke the windows. We don't know if the heat from the fire broke the windows or if perhaps the hose stream from the crew broke the windows. But in any event, the windows broke. This was observed on the outside by the captain of the ladder company, where he indicated that the fire went from about 1 to 2 feet wide coming over the rear eave of the house to about 20 feet wide. And he got his crew off the roof. What happens when that window breaks is that initially, if we look at this slice of temperature and flow about 3 feet above the floor, when the firefighters went in, there was still some cool air going in the front door. It was a bidirectional vent. The front door was serving as a bidirectional vent. Higher pressure hot gases coming out the top and cooler gases going in low. Once the windows on the rear broke and that pressure pushed the gases forward, now it was hot gases top to bottom by the front door, and the flow reversed itself from a few miles an hour going in the door to now in excess of 10 miles an hour pushing out of the door top to bottom. So that's that blowtorch effect that the firefighters speak about. So a flow path is basically the area of, in this case, the house, which consisted of rooms and a hallway that connect a high pressure vent to a lower pressure vent, or a higher pressure area to a low pressure area. Given the physics of high to low flow all the time, if the fire room is in the higher pressure area and you're in the lower pressure area, you're between the fire and the exhaust. You're between the fire and where the fire wants to go, and that is a very dangerous place to be.
When Mother Nature got a hold of us, sent that wind in toward Captain Harlow and Hobbs, had no chance, and some of the guys that were in there had no chance.
Fire gear is not designed to stand up to that. And we have to remember the weakest part of our ensemble is our mask, and that melts about 400 degrees. So that's not going to stand up to it. That's going to be the first thing probably to fail.
We looked at the study that Adam and Dan had put together. We went through the wind-driven fire study that was done in Gaithersburg. We looked at the study that was put together as a result at Governor's Island, and really tried to take all that information and merge it with what took place from the investigation that NIST had conducted as a result of NIOSH wanting to get them involved. And we learned a lot. We learned quite a bit.
You can't beat a wind-driven fire. If you're in the flow path, it's an extremely horrible thing. You're not going to beat it. Your gear's not going to stand up to it. You're going to suffer. And that's what I want to avoid.
The station that I came from, 26s, we've got 4 shifts there. All 4 shifts have an incredible reputation. We are passionate about what we do. All 4 shifts trained. I've always surrounded myself with passionate, positive, hardworking people that love to train. And one thing that I mentioned, and I mentioned it to several people, if this could happen to us, it could happen to anybody, because we had it together.